Alright, I'm going to try to study for my exam this way. What is risk management? Risk management is the process of identifying, accessing, and prioritizing potential risks and taking steps to minimize, monitor, and control those risks. It involves analyzing the potential impact of risks on an organization's operations and determining the likelihood of those risks occurring. Risk management involves several key steps, including risk management, risk mitigation, risk transfer, and risk avoidance. The goal of risk management is to reduce the potential impact of risk and ensure an organization is better prepared to respond to potential threats or unexpected events. According to Sun Tzu, what are two things must be achieved to secure information assets successfully? Sun Tzu, an ancient Chinese military strategist, stated that two things must be achieved to secure information assets successfully. 1. Knowing oneself, and 2. Knowing the enemy. In the context of information security, knowing oneself means understanding the strengths and weakness of your organization's security posture and having a clear understanding of the organization's asset risks and vulnerability. This can be achieved through risk assessments, vulnerability assessments, and penetration testing. Knowing your enemy means understanding the nature of the threats and attackers that your organization is likely to face, and understanding their motivations and tactics. This can be achieved through threat intelligence gathering, monitoring of external networks, and analysis of attack patterns and trends. Which community of interest usually takes the lead in information asset risk management? Which community of interest usually provides the resources used when undertaking information asset risk management? The community of interest that usually takes the lead in information risk management is the information security community. They are responsible for identifying the risks and determining appropriate controls to mitigate them. The community of interest that usually provides the resources used when undertaking information asset risk management is the senior management of the organization. They provide the necessary funding, staffing, and other resources needed to support the risk management process. In risk management strategies, why must periodic review be a part of the process? Periodic review is a critical component of risk management strategies because risks are constantly evolving and new threats may emerge over time. It is essential to review and reassess risks periodically to ensure that they are still relevant and to identify any new risks that may have arisen. This allows organizations to adjust their risk management strategies accordingly and to take appropriate measures to mitigate risks as necessary. Failure to review and update risk management strategies can lead to an organization being vulnerable to new and emerging threats, which can have serious consequences for the organization's information security posture. What value would an automated asset inventory system have for the risk identification process? An automated asset inventory system can have significant value for the risk identification process as it provides a comprehensive and up-to-date list of all information assets in an organization. This list can be used as a starting point for identifying risks associated with each asset, including vulnerabilities and threats. With an accurate inventory, an organization can better understand the scope and impact of potential risks and prioritize their risk management efforts. Additionally, an automated system can help ensure that the inventory is kept up to date, which is critical for effective risk management. What value would automate asset inventory systems have for the risk identification process? An automated asset inventory system can have significant value for the risk identification process as it provides a comprehensive and up-to-date list of all information assets in an organization. This list can be used as a starting point for identifying risk associated with each asset, including vulnerabilities and threats. With an accurate inventory, an organization can better understand the scope and impact of potential risks and prioritize their risk management efforts. Additionally, an automated system can help ensure that inventory is kept up to date, which is critical for effective risk management. Which is more important to the information asset clarification scheme, that it be comprehensive or that it may be mutually exclusive? Both comprehensiveness and mutual exclusivity are important for an effective information asset classification scheme. Comprehensiveness ensures that all information assets within the organization are identified and evaluated for risk. This is important because if some information assets are overlooked and not properly classified, they may not receive appropriate levels of protection, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Mutual exclusivity ensures that each information asset is classified in one category or classification level. This is important to avoid confusion and ensure consistency in the application of security controls, as different levels of protection may be required for different categories of information assets. It also helps to ensure that the protection measures are proportional to the value of the information asset and the risk associated with it. Therefore, an effective information asset classification scheme would be both comprehensive and mutually exclusive. What is the difference between an asset's ability to generate revenue and its ability to generate profit? In the context of information security, an asset's ability to generate revenue refers to the direct contribution of the asset provides to an organization's revenue stream. For example, a company's website could be an asset that generates revenue by facilitating online sales or by providing a platform for paid advertising. On the other hand, an asset's ability to generate profit takes into account the cost associated with generating that revenue. For instance, a company's website may generate revenue, but the cost of maintaining the website and processing online transactions may be factored to determine if it is truly profitable. In essence, revenue is the total amount of money an asset generates, while profit is the revenue generated minus the associated costs. Describe the TVA worksheet. What is it used for? The total value of asset worksheet is a tool used in the risk management process to identify the value of an information asset to the organization. The TVA worksheet assesses the value of an asset by breaking it down into three main components. 1. Tangible value, the value of the asset that can be easily quantified, such as its market value or replacement cost. 2. Intangible value, the value of the asset that is not easily quantifiable, such as its importance to the organization's mission or reputation. 3. Replacement cost, the cost of replacing the asset in the event of a loss or breach. The TVA worksheet is used to identify the potential impact of a loss or compromise of the asset, as well as to guide decisions regarding the level of protection that it is necessary to safeguard the asset for. By evaluating the TVA of an asset, an organization can prioritize its information security efforts, allocate resources more effectively, and make informed decisions about risk management strategies. Explain the simplest risk formula presented in this module. What are its primary elements? The simplest risk formula presented in this module is risk equals threat times vulnerability times asset value. The primary elements of this formula are 1. Threat. the potential for a threat source to exploit a vulnerability of an asset. 2. Vulnerability, a weakness or gap in security programs that can be exploited by threat sources. 3. Asset value, the value of an asset to the organization, which includes its tangible and intangible value. This formula is used to assess the level of risks associated with a specific asset in order to determine the appropriate level of security controls needed to mitigate that risk. By identifying and assessing each of these elements, an organization can better understand the risks it faces and makes informed decisions about how to protect its assets. What is competitive advantage? How has it changed in the recent years since the IT industry began? What is competitive disadvantage? Why has it emerged as a factor? Competitive advantage refers to the unique advantage that an organization have over its competitors in terms of its products, services, and market position. It is what sets an organization apart from others in the same industry and enables it to gain larger market shares, attracts and retains customers, and generates more profits. The IT industry has revolutionized the concept of competitive advantage in the early days of IT. Having access to advanced technologies gave organizations a competitive edge. However, the widespread availability and accessibility of these technologies, this advantage has largely disappeared. Today, the emphasis is on using technology to innovate and provide better customer service experiences, as well as being able to move quickly and respond to changes in market conditions. Competitive disadvantage is the opposite of competitive advantage. It refers to the factor that puts an organization at a disadvantage relative to its competitors. These factors could include inferior products or services, poor marketing, weak financials, or other issues that make it difficult for the organization to compete effectively. As the competition in the IT industry has intensified, it has become increasingly important for organizations to identify and address any potential sources of competitive disadvantages. Risk transfer. Describe the strategy of risk transfer. Risk transfer is the strategy of transferring the risk of loss from one entity to another, typically by purchasing insurance or by transferring the risk to a third party through contractual agreements, such as service legal agreements, otherwise known as SLAS, or outsourcing agreements. This strategy, the organization transfers some or all of the financial burden of potential losses to an external party, thereby reducing the impact of the loss on the organization. For example, an organization may transfer the risk of cyber attack by purchasing a cybersecurity insurance policy that would cover the cost of damages, remediation, and other expenses resulting from the attack. Similarly, an organization may transfer the risk associated with the managing and maintaining IT infrastructure by outsourcing these activities to a third-party vendor, who would then assume responsibility for ensuring the systems are secure, reliable, and available. While risk transfer can be an effective strategy for reducing the impact of loss, it should be used in combination with other risk management strategies, such as risk avoidance, risk mitigation, and risk acceptance. It is important to carefully evaluate the cost of transferring risk against the potential benefits, as well as the capabilities and reputations of third-party vendors or insurer, to ensure the organization is fully protected. Describe the strategy of risk mitigation. Risk mitigation is a risk management strategy that aims to reduce the likelihood of impact of potential risks. It involves taking proactive measures to identify, assess, and reduce risks to an acceptable level. Risk management involves several steps, including identify and assess risks. The first step in risk mitigation is to identify potential risks and assesses their likelihood and impact on the organization. 2. Develop a mitigation plan. Once the risks have been identified and assessed, a mitigation plan should be developed to address the most critical risks. The plan should outline the steps that will be taken to reduce the likelihood or impact of each risk. 3. Implement the plan. The mitigation plan should be implemented according to the established timelines and procedures. 4. Monitor and evaluate. The progress of the mitigation plan should be monitored and evaluated on an ongoing basis to determine if it is working as intended and to identify any necessary adjustments. Risk mitigation strategies can include a variety of measures, such as implementing security controls, conducting regular audits, and establishing policies and procedures, and providing employee training and education. By proactively addressing risks, organizations can reduce the likelihood and impact of security incidences and protect their information assets. Describe residual risk. Residual risk is the level of risk that remains after all efforts have been made to mitigate or eliminate risk through various risk management strategies, such as risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk transfer, or risk acceptance. It is the risk that an organization is willing to accept because the cost of further risk mitigation is too high or because it's impossible to eliminate all risk. The residual risk must be monitored and managed continuously to ensure that it remains within acceptable levels. The residual risk can be assessed and analyzed during a risk matrix or other risk assessment methods to determine the level of risk, likelihood of occurrence, and potential impact to the organization. What are the 3 common approaches to implementing the mitigation risk assessment strategy? The 3 common approaches to implementing the mitigation risk strategy are as follows. 1. Technical. The technical approach involves the use of hardware and software controls to reduce the likelihood and impact of risk. For example, implementing firewalls, intrusion detection systems, or antivirus software to protect against cyber attacks. 2. Administrative. The administrative approach involves policy, procedures, and awareness training to manage risk. This includes implementing security policies and procedures, access controls, and providing security awareness training to employees. 3. Physical. The physical approach involves the use of physical controls to prevent or reduce the likelihood and impact of risk. This includes physical security measures such as locks, cameras, and access control systems. It can also involve disaster recovery planning and off-site backup to protect against natural disasters or other physical threats. Describe how outsourcing can be used for risk transfer. Outsourcing can be used for risk transfer by delegating some of the risk management functions to a third-party service provider. The third-party provider takes on the responsibility of managing and mitigating risk associated with a particular function, service, or operation. The strategy can be used for a variety of functions, such as IT, human resources, accounting, and others. The outsourcing agreement should include a detailed service level agreement that outlines the roles and responsibilities of both parties, as well as the specific risks and management activities to be performed by the third-party provider. The SLA should also define the metrics to be used to monitor the performance of the third-party provider. While outsourcing can help an organization transfer some of the risks associated with a particular function or service, it does not completely eliminate the risk. The organization is still responsible for ensuring the third-party provider is effectively managing risks and complying with applicable laws and regulations. As such, it is important to conduct due diligence when selecting a third-party provider, monitor their performance regularly, and periodically assess the effectiveness of the outsourcing arrangement. What conditions must be met to ensure that risk acceptance has been been used properly. Risk acceptance is a strategy used to deal with risks that cannot be avoided or transferred. When accepting risks, an organization acknowledges the potential harm or loss that could result from the risk event, but decides to continue with the activity that causes the risk. To ensure the risk acceptance has been used properly, certain conditions must be met, including 1. The risk must fully be understood before deciding to accept the risk. The organization must have a complete understanding of the potential harm or loss that could result from the risk event. This includes understanding the likelihood of the risk occurring and the impact it could have on the organization. 2. The decision to accept the risk must be informed. The decision to accept a risk must be made based on an information understanding of the potential consequences of the risk event. This requires an analysis of the cost and benefits of accepting the risk. The risk must be acceptable. The risk must be evaluated in the context of the organization's risk tolerance and risk appetites. If the risk is deemed unacceptable, the organization should consider risk management strategies such as risk mitigation or risk transfer. The risk must be monitored. If a risk is accepted, it should continue to be monitored to ensure that the risk remains acceptable. If conditions change, the organization may need to reconsider the risk acceptance decision and consider other risk management strategies. What is risk appetite? Explain why risk appetite varies from organization to organization. Risk appetite is the level of risk that an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its objectives. Before any action is taken to manage the risk, it is a key component of the overall risk management framework of an organization. Risk appetite varies from organization to organization, depending on several factors such as the nature of the business, the industry, the regulatory environment, the competitive landscape, and the organization's overall risk tolerance. For example, a financial institution may have a lower risk appetite than a technology company because of the higher regulatory requirements and the potential financial impact of a breach. Similarly, a startup may have a higher risk appetite than an established organization because it is willing to take on more risk to achieve its growth objectives. In general, an organization's risk appetite should be aligned with its overall strategy, goals, and objectives. A well-defined risk appetite can help organizations make informed decisions about risk management and ensure that the level of risk taken is consistent with the organization's overall risk management framework. What is a cost-benefit analysis? A cost-benefit analysis is a systematic approach for evaluating the potential cost and benefit of a project, decision, or investment. It is used to compare the expected cost of a course of action with its expected benefits in order to determine whether the benefits outweigh the costs and whether the investment or project is worth pursuing. In a cost-benefit analysis, all relevant costs and benefits are identified and quantified in monetary terms, and then compared to determine the net benefit or net cost of the project. This allows decision makers to make informed choices and to evaluate the potential impact of a proposed course of action on the organization. The cost-benefit analysis can be used for a wide range of purposes, including evaluating the feasibility of a proposed project, comparing different alternatives, and assessing the potential impact of changes in policies or regulations. It is a widely used tool in business, government, and nonprofit organizations. What is the difference between intrinsic value and acquired value? Intrinsic value refers to the inherent worth or value of something, independent of external factors such as market demand or conditions. In the context of information security, intrinsic value might refer to the inherent value of a particular asset, i.e., a trade secret, intellectual property, or customer data. To the organization, regardless of whether or not it has a high market value. Acquired value, on the other hand, refers to the value that an asset has acquired through external factors such as market demand or conditions. For example, an organization's stock price may increase due to positive market conditions, despite the fact that company's underlying intrinsic value has not changed. In the context of information security, acquired value might refer to the increased value of an asset, i.e., customer data, due to external factors such as the introduction of new laws or regulations that require its protection. What is single loss expectancy? What is annual loss expectancy? Single loss expectancy, otherwise known as SLE, and annualized loss expectancy, ALE, are two concepts used in risk management and cost-benefit analysis to estimate the potential impact of a risk. Single loss expectancy, SLE, is the monetary value that represents the cost of a single occurrence of a specific type of loss. In other words, it is the expected monetary loss if a specific asset is compromised by a risk. The formula for SLE is SLE equals asset value times exposure factor, where asset value is the worth of the asset that is at risk. Exposure factors is the percentage of asset values that could be lost in a single loss event. Annualized loss expectancy, otherwise known as ALE, is the expected monetary loss that an organization will suffer over the course of a year from a specific type of risk. It takes into account both the likelihood of the risk occurring and the potential impact of that risk, as well as any risk mitigation measures that are in place. The formula for ALE is ALE equals SLE times annualized rate of occurrence, where SLE is the single loss expectancy. Annualized rate of occurrence is the estimated frequency that a risk event will occur in a year. What is qualitative risk assessment? A qualitative risk assessment is an approach used to identify and evaluate risks based on the subjective analysis of a person or a group of people, such as a team of experts or stakeholders. This approach is used when it is difficult to quantify risks or when data required for a quantitative assessment is not available or too expensive to obtain. Qualitative risk assessment typically involves identifying and prioritizing risks based on their likelihood, potential impact, and other relevant factors. The assessment results are presented in a qualitative form, often in a risk matrix, which helps to identify high-risk areas that require further attention and mitigation efforts. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to my little exam study session there. I think reciting some exam questions might help you out with, your soft skills and dialogue, and, when you're facing questions, about information technology. Still something I'm relatively new at, and there's a whole lot of technical jargon I'm still trying to adjust to, But yeah, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you found this helpful. Y'all take care.